மச்சி,
Yes.
you know that movie The Bombay?
எஸ், மணிரத்னம் படம்.
அப்புறம் நான் ஏஆர் முருகதாஸ் படம் நான் சொன்னேன் இல்ல, அந்த படத்துல இந்த உயிரே உயிரேன்னு ஒரு பாட்டு இருக்குல்ல, ஆஃப் கோர்ஸ் அந்த பாட்டு கொஞ்சம் பாடி நம்ம இந்த ஷோவை கொஞ்சம் அப்படியே சிங்கிங்ஸ் ஆஃப் தி சாங்ஸ்ல ஆரம்பிச்சிடலாமா?
ஓகே.
ஓகே.
உயிரே உயிரே வந்து என்னோடு கலந்து விடு.
உனக்கு லிரிக்ஸ் மறந்து போச்சா? நான் பாடுறேன் பாரு. This is the right lyrics டா. உயிரே உயிரே எப்படி தப்பிச்சி ஓடி விடு. அது எனக்கு தெரியும். So of course today we have to introduce ourselves da. நம்ம டாபிக் பொறுத்த முடியும் நம்ம இன்ட்ரோ듀ce பண்ணனும். இத எப்ப பார்த்தாலும் மறந்து போடுறோம். Okay, my name is Tanesh.
My name is Joshua Michael
and this is What She is Telling.
What she is telling. I want more in the right. I want more in the right.
I want more in the right. I want more in the right. Shut up man. இன்னைக்கு உள்ள எபிசோட் is a very special episode. இது எல்லா எபிசோடும் தான் சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கோம். But இன்னைக்கு truly is we are paying the homage. ஏதோ ஒரு மேட்ச். நான் சொல்றதுலயே பாரு அந்த தாக்கம் இருக்கு. We are paying homage
to the owner of the fellow who came up with the idea for our title itself. What she is telling.
The ever legendary, the ever Thalaivan, the
Vaigai Puyal
Vadivelu
sir அவர்கள்
ஓட ஸ்பெஷல் அப்ரிசியேஷன் எபிசோட் தான் இன்னைக்குள்ள பாட்காஸ்ட்.
Of course, it's surprising that it took us 11 episodes to come to Vadivelu.
It's also because there's a lot of pressure to talk about the guy who is pretty much with us every single day.
Yes.
In our daily lives, in our daily jokes and daily humor.
Correct.
So what's with Vadivelu, right? Again, the end of the day, this podcast today is again எல்லார பத்தியும் பேசுறோம். I mean, we are talking, when it comes to Tamil cinema, right? We speak very fondly of course Thalaivan Rajinikanth,
of course,
Ulaganayagan, Kamal Haasan, Vijay, Ajit, இவங்க எல்லார பத்தியும் பேசுறோம். But what we keep forgetting is even if we think Rajinikanth is the biggest actor or star in Tamil cinema, Vadivelu is probably a name that's probably as equal to that. I know a lot of people would feel very offended when I say that, but
no, but it's true. It's true.
ஒரு ரஜினிகாந்த்க்கு கூட நம்ம everyday யோசிப்போமா தெரியாது. Like, do we think of Rajinikanth every single day in our daily lives? But here's an actor who's probably part of our daily life without you even realizing.
Correct. So the thing is, everybody knows Rajinikanth. Everybody எல்லாத்துக்கும் வந்து ரஜினிகாந்த்ன்ற அந்த தெரியும், of course, right? Especially in Tamil Nadu, especially any Tamil cinema watching world, right? இரு லைட்டா தண்டல முழுசுக்கிச்சு நினைக்கிறேன். Anyway, like you said, we don't really think of Rajinikanth in our daily life because none of our daily lives is like what Rajinikanth does in a film. But Vadivelu sir, whatever he has done, his dialogues, his comedy, his one-liners and all that, so is somehow incorporated into everybody's daily life. Like ஏதாவது பண்ணா வந்து ஒரு பிரேக்ஃபாஸ்ட் சாப்பிடும்போது வடை இருந்துச்சுன்னா வடை போச்சே, அந்த மாதிரி எது செஞ்சாலும் அந்த ஒரு வடிவேலோட எலிமெண்ட் இருக்கும்.
This reminds me of a tweet I tweeted on my Twitter. Obviously that's why I tweet, right? Which the other day when I said if even a daily life, if something falls on like something we get hit or something falls on your feet or whatever, you say like ouch, but I'll say amme, right? We don't realize that Vadiveluism or Vadivelu mannerism is so ingrained in our life as on a daily routine that we don't realize it's Vadivelu's effect.
Yes.
We don't think of it as Vadivelu because we think we don't necessarily say the Vadivelu பண்ற ஒரு mannerism or Vadivelu சொல்ற dialogue, but we don't realize it, but it's actually part of our daily life.
Correct. The thing is, and ஒரு நீ சொன்ன தெரியுமா, we don't realize it's Vadivelu, but we do it. That is that measure of success Vadivelu's jokes and comedies and Vadivelu as a person as is brought on because what he does is so ingrained in our lifestyle now, thanks to him of course, that it doesn't even occur to you that this comedy actor who did it அப்படினு இருக்க இல்லாம அதையும் தாண்டி everyday lifeல இப்ப நான் வந்து அம்மேன்னு சொன்னேன்னா அவன் எப்போதும் அம்மேன்னு தான் சொல்லுவான். ஏதாவது இதாயிடுச்சுன்னா நான் வடை போச்சேன் அப்படின்னு சொன்னா அவன் அப்படி சொல்ல. Like it has become part of everyone. It's not something that is Vadivelu's that people are copying and saying இல்லாம it has become part of it. That's why we could name the show What She's Telling,
Yeah.
and nobody comes and say என்னடா வடிவேலு dialogue copy பண்றீங்க, because it's part of everyone now. That's the idea.
So today's podcast is again, it's very easy to sit down and talk about what is your favorite Vadivelu comedy.
Of course.
It's very easy to talk about what is my favorite Vadivelu character.
Correct.
And the top of it, my head, literally, as I say it, I always have this image of the puppy, Sattupona puppy, she will hold and say, all this dog liking
Not
me.
only dogs, all animals liking me.
It's very easy to talk about it because these are...
ஃபோமிடா இந்த மனதில் திருடி விட்டாய் இந்த What She's Telling படத்துல தான், you know, hello, What She's Telling, அவ லவ் சொன்னா, காது தொட்டு பார்த்துட்டு
Viblet?
Same blood.
It's that nuance of comedy which we'll get to. Okay, let me, I don't want to digress just
4
yet because
pieces, 5 pieces, not enough.
Okay,
What to do?
Let's agree that we're not going to get caught up in just revisiting each and every word you will say, because that will take another podcast, right? But today's podcast, because again, at the end of the day, what she's telling is just not a podcast for us to just revisit and laugh and enjoy some of our favorite.
அதுக்கு வந்து ஆதித்யா சேனலே
அதுக்கு ஆதித்யா சேனலே பார்த்துட்டு போயிடலாம். What she's telling podcast is also a way or platform for us to discuss in depth or in probably in a bit of broader spectrum why Vadivelu is the kind of mass actor
comedian,
or following or comedian that he is, and we're going to break it down to science.
And why is he so legendary in our everyday daily life, as in the culture of Tamil audience?
Because
right?
let's face it, when was the last Vadivelu film that got released? But yet we still speak of him as if there's a movie releasing every single week.
Correct.
Right? So what
usually what we do every day, I mean in every episode, is we talk about a movie, we go into the writing of it, adha eppadi eludhiruanga eppadina adala analyze பண்ணுவோம். And just because it's a comedian, it's a joke, it's comedy, Vadivelu, you know, adunala வந்து not to say there is no in-depth thought to it, there is no not to say we can't rule it off as that. ஒரு 30 வருஷமா his career in Tamil cinema, 30 வருஷமா, if you can pull off comedy like that and stay as fresh as ever, and even when you're not making movies for like 10 years or so, people are still quoting you every single day now. There is so much more to be analyzed in that.
Correct.
As and in parallel to what we do with movies in every single episode. But this week's episode, of course, is Vadivelu, basically Vadiveluism lah.
So the theme for today particularly is to kind of talk about why Vadivelu is pretty much what is that magic sauce, we call it. What is that magic sauce behind like the Vadivelu comedy that is still sort of still very relevant? And that's very interesting for us to look at, because cinema in general is a very time-based industry இல்லையா? இப்போ வந்து for example, எப்படி தான் நம்ம ஒரு எம்ஜிஆர் சிவாஜி வந்து அப்படி பார்த்து நம்ம hello, they are great actors or whatever. Let's be very honest. When if you were to watch an MGR film now, you'll be like, என்னது இவரியா வந்து அவ்வளோ, because MGR at one point,
don't get us wrong, it's not to say he's not a great actor, obviously there's no debate about that, and not much about, but it's the fact that it's so many years since then.
So, and that acting maybe for you now feels a bit off. Or even Shivaji. A lot of people, again, obviously when Shivaji Ganesan was acting at that point, Tamil cinema was very influenced by theatre. Right? Correct. So, when, for example, if Shivaji or acting at the பார்த்தனா ரொம்ப theatrical-ஆ இருக்கும். It's exaggerated. அது ஒரு மாமனா மச்சானா மானம் கட்டவனே.
And when you compare to movies these days, when you watch Shivaji's acting and all that, you can tell like idena romba, you can see the acting clearly. Whereas now ipo வந்து people sort of appreciate the more natural thing. Correct. But that's just because times change,
and it's not because Shivaji is an over exaggerated sorry, so it's the actor who over exaggerate. It's just at that point of time Tamil cinema was very influenced by theatre,
because that is that evolution of Tamil cinema, right? That's how Tamil cinema evolved from the theatres to more dramatic stuff, and then people realize that people want to know stories about your everyday middle class person, the person in a rural village. People realize that these stories also can be told, and people enjoy listening to the stories. Nala da நம்ம கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமா வந்தோம்.
So on that point, on that note, so even with actors, we've realized that over time acting can be suddenly looked at as good what used to be so good now is probably like not exactly my style.
Yeah.
Even the great Rajinikanth, if for example if Rajini were to release an Annamalai right now, it would be like என்ன கொஞ்சம் ஓவரா பண்றாரு,
over sentimental
என்ன கொஞ்சம் like ஒரு அருணாச்சலம் or if you, that acting feels a bit overdone.
Correct.
Right now. But what is so interesting to me at least is or Vadivelu's movie that probably came out 10-15 years ago is still so funny.
Yeah.
That how come for comedy at least that thing that has not aged at all?
Yeah.
Why is it still as humorous as, for example, varum ana varadi? That was 15 years ago if I'm not wrong, or 10 years ago. Total Pool Maru was at least 10 years ago.
Right,
at least a decade ago. But why is it still so fresh that we are still quoting it in a daily life? So that is that secret, or that is that reason why we did our podcast today, is to understand why Vadivelu is such a big part of our life, even though he's not been acting in the last
the thing
years
is,
or so.
there are a lot of other huge comedians as well. Of course, you have your Nagesh at that time, right? And then you have your Gaundamani and Sendil who came up and who was the comedic duo to go to at that point. And then came in Vadivelu.
Yeah.
With Vadivelu came in also Vivek. And Vivek, let's not kid ourselves, is a huge comedian by itself. And he also
Vivek and Vadivelu at that point was your Vijay and Ajit.
Correct.
Right?
So
Yeah.
Vivek might not be as popular as Vadivelu is, right? Not to say he's not as popular. He is as popular.
He's probably not as, he has not gone and achieved that level of
invincibility.
like the absolute,
as Vadivelu, but he's still right
there.
up there. For any comedian these days, இப்போ அந்த விவேக் போன லெவலுக்கு போறதுனா கூட கஷ்டம். So Vadivelu வந்து சொல்லவே வேணாம். But Vivek இந்த level கூட nobody can touch. Right? You have that, and then of course you had your Santanam, you had your Yogi Babu அப்படின்னு வருது. We have a whole stretch of all this, right? But I always feel why I think Vadivelu, like you said, ஒரு 10-20 வருஷம் நிக்கிற comedy it sticks is because Vadivelu was in that time of Tamil cinema when the comedy of that film was independent to what was happening
so they were so to elaborate on the point, they were doing separate comedy tracks. Right? So now films you watch now, you realize the comedy is again
integrated.
Writers make it a point to make sure that the comedy kind of comes as part of the narration.
And it makes sense on today's
because at least now we have stories.
Correct.
That is the truth, right? So there's a legit story, there's a legit core plot, which then the writer's like, okay, I don't want to disturb this core plot, but I have to still have comedy, so let's try to narrate it as part of the comedy. But back then they just have like a concept is இந்த பொண்ணு பையன் லவ் பண்றாங்க சார், அது 10,000 படம் வந்திருக்கும் அந்த மாதிரி. But இதுல இருந்து என்ன புதுசா பண்ணலாம்? So you go to a person like Vadivelu or Vivek and say, okay, how can you infuse comedy in part of this bigger scheme of things?
I would treat movies back then like a stew. Stew na like என்னன்னா உனக்கு வேண்டிய எல்லாம் இறைச்சி வேணுமா, மீட் வேணுமா, you throw it in there. You want potatoes, carbohydrate, throw it in there. You want some vegetables, throw it in there. Just throw everything that you want, throw it in that same recipe, just cook it and then serve.
And hope
it works, because in that one dish you have everything. யாருக்கு என்ன வேணுமோ நீங்க எடுத்துக்கலாம் அப்படின்ற மாதிரி இருக்கும். But nowadays movies are more like, okay, இதுதான் எனக்கு வேணும். இந்த டிஷ் வந்து ஒரு மீன் டிஷ். இந்த மீன் டிஷ்ல what works and only I'm going to attach. அப்படினால yes, as a movie nowadays you have stronger movies. When you compare back then, a lot of movies that barely had any proper story to it. But comedy has suffered because of that. Because it isn't as independent to do whatever it wants. Someone like Vadivelu, like I would say, Vadivelu, if he were to come back to Tamil cinema now, would sort of suffer to have the same impact as he did back then.
I would tend to disagree a bit, because again, I do feel, again, people like, again, I always refer to the way Lokesh Kanagaraj always writes, at least although he's only done 2. Like, I do believe people like Lokesh could be able to still figure out a way to kind of infuse Vadivelu. Because let's be honest, I think the last movie that Vadivelu was part of that I could remember is Mirza, if I'm not wrong. And he was absolutely wasted in that movie.
Correct.
Because people at least struggle to kind of include, okay, how can I still make Vadivelu as part of this? Because if you realize in the Mercel, they tried kind of including him as part of, okay, the old Vadivelu. I'm a best two friend. That humor didn't stick.
Correct.
Right? But, okay, before we even go down there, right, let's again take a step back and look at why Vadivelu at the end, first and foremost, kind of became the kind of force he was, right? So if you look at the kind of evolution of cinema, right, or at least with comedy, we used to have of course, for those who remember Chandra Babu, right, that or that kind of slapstickness, or the very Charlie Chaplin sort of effect was, the influence is there, the very physical comedy, which what Vadivelu does in the beginning of his career, if you don't
because he was
remember,
very thin and all that, everything applied for him to do.
so
and
he was able to use that physical comedy very well. But yes, so you had your Chandra Babus, T.S. Bala, if you remember, of course Nagesh. Who can forget Nagesh? Again, I didn't have much exposure to Nagesh in my lifetime.
நம்ம கொஞ்சம் youngsters
நம்ம கொஞ்சம் வாலிப வயசு. See, even that, right, is based on Vadivelu. I didn't mean that. I didn't intend that to say it like that. But what I mean is, Nagesh had his own brand of humor. Again, we used to read and hear about how even the great Shivaji and MGR used to kind of allocate their dates or their schedule
to match Nagesh.
Because Nagesh brought in that humor of the comedian can still be a very significant part of the story. Again, Nagesh was one of the first actors at that point who became a hero. If you remember this movie called Serva Sundaram, right?
Yeah.
So again, Nagesh had that whole occult behind him, right? In that sense. And of course, we had also people like M.R. Radha. If you remember that very... I can't do that. I can't do the impression. But again, who brought in the whole politics being a rationalist or whatever, like all that. He had he used comedy as a way to criticize the government, for example, right? Which what Vivek eventually does when in his prime.
Vivek also took a point of sort of mocking things like superstition.
Correct.
And whatever he felt in society was, needs to be, society needs to be done with it. இதுக்குலாம் வேணாம், இதுக்கு இந்த மாதிரிலாம் இருக்க வேணாம் அப்படின்லாம் he sort of went with it. And that is what sort of Vivek was sort of because his comedy, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them came from a point of I'm opposed to this in Mary. So for those who were இப்போ இந்த ஐடியாக்கு I'm opposed to superstition, I don't like superstition இருக்கிற மாதிரி superstition mock பண்ற மாதிரி ஒரு ஐடியா வந்துச்சுன்னா those who did believe in those superstition started to sort of push that away. So it didn't, not to say the comedy didn't work, it worked for that one half of people who agreed with him. It didn't work as universally as Vadivelu's comedy did, right?
And I think Vivek, to put it simply, Vivek basically projected out his ideologies about, I think Vivek, if I'm not wrong, is probably an atheist as well. So he projected out his lack of faith in religion or his anger towards superstition or just general things like avulu periya parts la illada or lorry or elumchalada oda bodhu, all that is funny on surface, but again that kind of talks to you about his anger towards society. But what Vadivelu did is the complete opposite. He didn't project, he absorbed. So he went to the streets and he looked at all the different characters. Does he believe in them? Does he not believe in them? He didn't care. He just said, I'm going to play out these really typical roles and I'm going to exaggerate it.
Correct.
Right? I'm going to like that, that or tea kada or person or a grocery shop or selavu jama kadala irukra oru. He took all this day-to-day stuff you always see and he exaggerated it by like 500%.
Correct.
And added on what people were already feeling as a comedy.
Correct. So what Vivek did essentially is, okay, in society you have your person type A, person type B, person type C. Vivek was that normal person who went and dealt with all these people. இப்போ இந்த A வந்து இந்த மாதிரிலாம் செய்யறானா, அது வந்து ஒரு நார்மல் மனசனா இருக்கிற விவேக் எப்படி வந்து ரியாக்ட் பண்ணுவான்ற மாதிரி ரியாக்ட் பண்ணி. So Vivek's way of addressing these different sensibilities in a society was to react to the different sensibilities. But what Vadivelu did, like you said, he became those people. So இப்படி பண்றவன் ஒருத்தர் இருக்கானா, so Vadivelu portrayed a person who would do that. And then okay, what would happen to him அப்படின்ற மாதிரி. சரி இல்ல A இல்லாம B மாதிரி ஒருத்தர் இருக்கானா, இவன் வந்து so Vadivelu then played a character like this guy. So like you said, he absorbed it. He became that target of any sort of comedy.
And that's the trick with comedy, right? I mean, of course, you write comedy, you should know this. The humor is not on what is being said. It is the exaggeration that kind of behind it. Like, for example, like Vadivelu says, for example, a dog gets injured, but in that comedy scene, Vadivelu kills the dog. And again, that extreme, when you bring it such an extreme, it becomes unbelievable. It becomes funny.
Correct.
Because you know back of your head, it's not going to happen, right?
There is a lot of scenarios in your everyday life that happens, and then you think, இது வந்து கொஞ்சம் ஓவர் அப்படி நடந்திருந்தா செம்ம காமெடியா இருந்திருக்குமே.
Exactly.
It doesn't happen in everyday life because there's consequences of bringing it to that extreme. But அதே ஒரு படத்துல எடுத்து கொண்டு வர்றதா வடிவேலுவோட style. Like,
and which what we also have kind of mentioned, if you remember in our Panchatandiram episode, in comedy is essentially tragedy, right?
Correct.
And tragedy is something very extreme has happened and you tend to find that humor in it. But again, going back to Vadivelu, right? And we spoke of Vivek in between.
Yeah.
Why again Vadivelu's rise in that sense was very difficult in that sense, because Vadivelu came in at a time where Goundamani and Senthil was the ultimate duo. Goundamani and Senthil, again, for those who followed them in the past also, were very much largely based on that Tom and Jerry sort of a comedy, right? Like the Goundamani being Tom and Senthil being the comedy. Anne, right? that humor was very strong, but it also came in at a time where a lot of Tamil cinema, and what they very famously call it, Tamil cinema was taken from the studio and brought to the village.
Correct.
Brought outside the set.
From your historical, epic sort of movies, it started becoming like
more like Karnan or whatever. Like they used to do in a set.
Correct.
Right? They used to create an AVM studio. So I think at that time Prasad Studio was still there. They were doing movies in an enclosed space,
environment
like
spaces.
And directors like Bharati Raja and even Mindred, for those who know Mindred movies, they brought it out into the street and they shot it at real life locations,
villages, rural areas,
and Tamil cinema became much more normal.
Correct.
What I mean is like the context of what was the story, from like just epic Karnan or the Veerapandiya Kattabomman sort of a concept. It became about just a normal guy in a village.
See, when you go from a story about these great characters, I love mostly stories that are written.
Sure.
Right. So when that's the case, every character that you write has some sort of what do you call that, purpose to the story. The character with a strong arc. But when they brought it down to the streets, as you say, and you brought it down to their villages and whatnot, now there is an opening for a lot more characters who have no substance. But they are characters. They are part of that society. இப்போ ஒரு கம்பத்துல ஒரு வில்லேஜ்ல வந்து இந்த மெயின் ஒரு ஃபேமிலி இருக்கும், ஜமீன் பரம்பரைன்னு ஒரு ஃபேமிலி இருக்கும். நம்ம விஜயகாந்த்லாம் நடிச்சிருக்காரு. That kind of stuff. But you also have the guy in the village who has no job. Who just goes around, but somehow is in every situation.
You're talking about Sunapana.
Something like that.
Literally Sunapana, if you remember.
Something like this guy who has no substance to him. He does nothing. He's unemployed. But he is in every situation, and somehow he shapes how that society lives.
And I think that's where Vadivelu came in at the right time, right? Because Goundamani and Senthil was sort of dominating, but they were also becoming very monotonous.
Correct.
They were just becoming like, okay, we get it. The humor is there. And again, of course, Vadivelu, Goundamani and Senthil were just there for almost 10-15 years, and they kind of just explored all angles of that duo. Correct. At one point they even broke up and they did their own films at one point, but of course it was not as funny. Right? And that's when Vadivelu started appearing in this picture, right? Again, this guy, scrawny guy, and I think his first film was I remember writing it somewhere. I think his first film that people started paying attention to him is Devurmagan. If you remember, as a key character, right? Again, that scene I still remember, that where he loses an arm, right? And then he says, na thalai vettu. Again, that scene kind of just propelled him, because again, for a long time we have not seen a comedian who till that point was a comedian suddenly became a really good character artist. And we have not seen, again, kudos to Kamal Haasan for that scene. I don't think he intended it to be, but I think Vadivelu took that chance, right? Like suddenly people started paying attention to him and say, hey, the boy can act.
Correct.
And he
not just comedy.
He made me laugh in the same movie about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, and this guy is making me cry now.
Correct.
So hey, let's pay attention to this guy moving forward. So Devurmagan started propelling Vadivelu as someone that, okay, let's pay attention to this scrawny little guy. And then of course, if you remember Singaravelan.
Correct. But this Singaravelan should be before Devurmagan, I'm assuming.
Yes, but I think Singaravelan's, I think again by Kamal Haasan, it was the time when he came in, he started appearing in these pictures.
Correct.
With Goundamani and Senthil.
And if I remember correctly, Singaravelan, he didn't have much dialogue, so he had to be that slapstick guy and all, right?
And I think unfortunately he had to come in like that because of his physique, and of course Goundamani and Senthil were just was like a force to like be reckoned with at that point.
He couldn't go through them. He had to go around them at that point.
Correct.
Right?
And it did well for him, right?
Correct.
And then came in the big film.
Correct.
Which is the Kadhalan. Right. Again, the way I think Kadhalan was probably his first film where he was the sole comedian.
Correct.
As a sidekick to Prabhudeva, right?
Correct. The thing with when you compare with like Goundamani, Senthil to Vadivelu is the fact that Goundamani and Senthil, because of that duo, because they had to somehow fit in that duo all the time, could not really explore and play too many different characters. They could change their get-up, they could change the occupation of the character in the movie, but essentially who they are and how they react is the same, because they sort of built that.
Because Goundamani always has to be hangry.
He always has to be like, "Hey, you want to ongi vadikkiradhu." That soon became very that is them. Adu vittu poradhukku vaaipu illama ponanaala da they sort of died out.
You always have to write scenes which kind of has to end with Kaundamanni not being happy with
Sendil and chasing him away, scolding him or whatever not, you know. So what Vadivelu could do, because he was again independent, he was sort of just himself, he could play many different characters, and that doesn't mean you change your character's name in the movie and change the getup and change the occupation. You could literally change the way the character is. So in one movie he could be this guy who is overconfident but has like நம்ம the என்ன படம் அந்த சுந்தர்சி படத்துல நாய்சேகர்
நானும்
ரவுடிதான் அப்படி ஆனா அடிச்சா வந்து ஒண்ணுக்கு போற கேரக்டர். In another movie he could be this in your friends he could be this contractor who is running all these people but always gets into trouble and அப்படினு. In another movie he could be this guy who always gets bullied. அப்படினு his spectrum could go all over the place, and him Vadivelu as an actor allowed that versatility.
And I think that's eventually leads us to the secret sauce that we were talking about. Why is comedy suddenly became the comedy? What we defined a generation, right? And if you really pay attention to it, it's simply for a very simple reason: self-depreciating jokes.
Correct.
Right? Vadivelu is one of those comedians who, as opposed to Kaundamanni or Sendil, I think more Kaundamanni, because Sendil sort of had that, and it's very different from M.R. Radha or Nagesh, because Vadivelu did not feel or did not shy away from making fun of himself.
Correct.
And which was again what was very very different from Vivek. Right? Vivek was very much focused on making fun of other people. Right? And again, in a good way. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
It was smart of Vivek to do that, because if he had gone the same route as Vadivelu, he would have been no one, because Vadivelu would have just...
Plus, again, let's be very honest at this point. Vivek was that fair-looking guy who people found very difficult to relate to. Right? So Vivek had done what Vadivelu did, which is more of the people, right? Like people's humor. Vivek would have been very out of place, because the way he looked, he was a good-looking guy, right? And fair, and he was a bit more out. He was the outsider in that sense, right? And he had to do what an outsider would do, which is to kind of look in rather than look inside, right? So
what Vivek did is the best move for his career as it is. It's just that what Vadivelu did is...
Unfortunately, he came in at a generation which included Vivek. Which included Vadivelu.
And ended up... Because if... Let's put aside Vadivelu, Vivek is this character that we are talking about, who's this monstrous legend, right? But Vadivelu just tend to appeal universally way more than Vivek.
Because there was a time where Vivek and Vadivelu were sort of neck to neck. If you remember, there was when
movies started going from village to urban stories in your early 2000s, you know, in your Vijay, in your youth.
Correct.
You know, urban போகும்போது Vivek was the one coming up.
Because if you remember movies like, again, I'm going to put out a movie name that is probably 9 out of 10 people wouldn't know. This movie called Luti.
Okay, I feel like I've heard of
this
it.
This Satyaraj movie where both Vivek and Vadivelu was part of the film.
Right.
It was the Madurai Vivek. It's a funny song.
இருந்த லிங்க் கொஞ்சம் போடுங்க comment sectionல.
It's essentially a song where both Vivek and Vadivelu are kind of put head to head. The story includes both Vivek and Vadivelu, and they are like somehow related to Satyaraj. And they're gonna fight. Of course, if you remember Middle Class Madhavan, with Prabhu, and again, those were the 2000s where Vadivelu and Vivek were pretty much neck to neck. No one could differentiate them and kind of like say, okay, who's better, who's not.
Correct.
But in that phase, that came a point of time which I feel Vadivelu just took it a level higher, and I kind of just broke away from that pack. The movie that I'm talking about is Winner. For example, right? So that movie kind of just changed the game for Vadivelu.
Kaipulla character.
Because again, what I said earlier, why Vadivelu became such an icon is because in Winner especially, he made fun of himself.
Entire movie, right? And fun fact about the movie Winner, and maybe some of you know this, but maybe a lot of you don't. In the Winner movie, if you notice, Vadivelu வந்து அப்படியே நொண்டிக்கிட்டு தான் படம் முழுக்க. So ஆரம்பத்துல வந்து in the beginning, he gets into a fight and he gets beaten in his leg. என் காலு his leg breaks, and the entire movie is wearing like a cast, and he's like running. So the reason for that is actually when Sundarsi was directing the movie, when he approached Vadivelu to say come and act in my movie, Vadivelu had a injury, leg injury. and he was limping in real life, right?
Yeah.
And he said, no, முடியாது நடிக்க முடியாது கால் அடிபட்டிருக்குன்னு. But Sundar C was so adamant that he wanted Vadivelu, maybe because he realized that his script was weak as hell and he needed Vadivelu in the movie.
Because let's face it, what is Winner? Winner is probably, I think, I just read on an article the other day, it was probably on, I think it was Film Companions article, this guy said, if the producer of Winner was still holding the rights of the movie with him, it would have become a millionaire.
Correct.
Because Winner is still being played on television, on Aditya TV. The comedy is still being played. It is probably one of the most watched comedy film ever.
Correct.
And why? What was the story of
Nobody
Winner?
knows the story.
Actually, I don't remember.
All I know is Prashant goes back to his grandparents, and that's all I know.
What I know is Kiran is in that movie. But Kiran. Anyway.
Yeah. So Sundar C was adamant that he wanted Vadivelu in the script. So he says, சரி என்ன பண்ணுவோம், படத்துக்கு ஸ்டார்டிங்லேயே வந்து உங்களுக்கு கால் அடிப்படுற மாதிரி ஒரு சீன் வச்சிருவோம். ஓகே, கால் அடிப்படுற மாதிரி ஒரு சீன் வச்சுட்டு அதுக்கு மேலே நீங்க படத்தில் உண்மையான ரியல் லைஃப்ல நோண்டுற மாதிரி நீங்க நோண்டுங்க, பிரச்சனை இல்லை, இது கதையில உள்ள. So they did that, and that's why in the entire movie he's limping. And I thought it's a very fun fact, because here is this director who decided, I know you're injured, sir, but please
help
act
me
in my movie. And that's how strong and powerful Vadivelu was at that point.
And lucky for him, and I think some of the time, most of the time, people's biggest breaks literally comes because his leg broke. If you know what I mean, right? Because
break a leg. அது இதுதானா?
I genuinely feel that's probably the best thing that's happened to Vadivelu, because that film or that situation forced him to take his comedy to a next level. That's where I genuinely think he started making fun of himself.
Correct.
Right? Because again, that one scene defines Vadivelu's comedy for me, is that scene where he sits after the first introduction and says, கைப்புள்ளுக்கு கட்டம் சரியில்லை, all that, and he will go into that fight. இந்த கோடு தானே நீயும் வரக்கூடாது, நானும் வரமாட்டேன். And then when the guy says, I forgot the guy's name, he says, நேத்து போனவன் தான் அடி வாங்கினேன். What he says next, which is, அது போன மாசம், இது நான் சொல்றேன் இந்த மாசம், that changed everything for me, because of course if you remember that கைப்புள்ள character is very much similar to Sunapana.
Yeah.
Sunapana கண்ணில் தெரிஞ்சிட கூடாதுடா பயம். But I think he kind of brought it to a level high in Winner, because he immediately, suddenly people started looking at this comedian as someone who's very scared.
Yeah.
But he doesn't show it to people, right? And when he started,
which is what a lot of us I realized this is just an exaggerated
and
one.
with the moment Vadivelu brought it to a screen, it just changed the whole game of comedy. What is comedy now? Comedy is just self-realization that you're no one, but in real life people tend to do this.
Correct.
I think that's when he figured that secret, or how do I play characters where a lot of his characters are just built on self-confidence.
Correct. That became sort of his identity towards the later part of, I mean, as 2000 started rolling out, right?
Because I think, and then I think once he realized that, okay, I'm going to base all my characters as day-to-day life people who are just very high in confidence, but literally has
nothing inside.
Like if you remember that character, I forgot the movie.
And the Mandapatram.
Every
Bin Laden.
Right? நாங்க எங்கே போல பாடு மல்லாக படுப்போம் chips, all that is again, you might call this as repetitive. You never realize it, right? Because Vadivelu uses the same template, but we keep saying, oh, Vadivelu has played so many characters over the last, but he has changed his get-ups, but the essence of his character, which is all that is built on the fact that the guy was just all talk but no walk. Right?
Yeah.
But that's his secret sauce.
Yeah, and even that is only, like I said, like after your 2000, so he sort of went with that with that sort of role, right?
Yeah.
Earlier than that, he was more like so he could play a sidekick.
Yeah.
He could play, as he got slightly older, he started playing a bit more like on the Mama character.
Yeah.
Chittappa character.
And that was that face.
Yeah.
Right?
He
was the...
He could, so he sort of was able to adapt himself as he grew older.
Yeah.
As the movie, like you're in your early 80s to 90s, until you hit your 2000, it was more village-ish based stories. And then suddenly in 2000, with the new millennium, it became very urban.
Yeah.
But so this is something that Gaundamani and Senthil couldn't penetrate. But Vadivelu immediately flipped a switch and entered that urban thing.
And I think the reason behind it is that self-referentiating joke, right?
Because that applies everywhere.
Everywhere.
அப்படி ஒரு character இருப்பான், ஒரு சிட்டில
it's a story about this guy who came from the village and is based on...
Most of the time it's like that.
And one of my favorite comedy, which I feel feels very underrated, is the scene where the movie, again I forgot the name, where ஒரு weird-ஆன hairstyle வச்சிருப்பான். Is a thief with a bunch of people, and then ஒரு ரைஸ் கடையில போயிட்டு வந்து அரிசி தேடுவானுங்க.
Okay.
Again, he goes to a shop, then he puts the like a magnet under the thing, and then அந்த அரிசி அந்த full turns, and again it kind of good. That comedy would work in a village setup, it would work in a urban setup, as you said, because now it's no longer about the story, it is about this character who's all confidence and is just whatever. Then that what sort of brings me to another point, which is why I feel ultimately, in addition to being self-depreciating, ultimately is the reason why Vadivelu is as legendary as he was, even though he's not making movies, is because his comedies, and most of them dialogue based, are very independent of that scenario, of that setting of that movie. And the dialogue and the comedy and the punchline is so independent of everything, and usually these punchlines are very vague. So இப்ப வந்துட்டா, so in that வந்துட்டா has nothing to do. Of course you do have your setup where Parthiban is the one who comes and makes fun of him, sort of threatens him, நீயா துபாய் பத்தி ரொம்ப பேசிட்டு இருக்க அப்படின்னு துபாய் குறுக்கு சந்து.
So it has all that setting in that story, but that punchline வந்துட்டா is very independent. You can apply it anywhere. அதே மாதிரி தான் வடை போச்சு, but you can apply it to anything. When you like sort of waste something, ஏதாவது ஒன்று போச்சுனா, வடை போச்சே அப்படின்னு பார்க்கலாம். All of his punchline became very vague. Adinala, it was so independent. That's why today they are now living as memes.
Because I think it was, okay, I'm sure when Vadivelu wrote this or came up with the line, he didn't really do, like there was not much science behind it.
Correct. But
I think he had his logic in the right place, where when he probably would have went like, let me write something that is very day-to-day basis.
Correct.
And he probably didn't think much about, okay, 10 வருஷத்துல I want this to be a meme, or I want this to be quoted or whatever. But you realize that the way for you to get into people's mind or heart is by talking to them about their daily issues. Right? And then this is what I meant by as you mentioned, the Vanditaya. We always seemed, again, it's a normal human reaction, right? We will always root for the underdog.
Correct.
And Vadivelu was always the comedian who was the underdog. In every situations. He's again puts himself as a very confident guy, but he always puts himself as I'm the poor guy. I'm always, I'm always in this trouble. Like Friends, for me, also kind of played a huge role in him kind of positioning himself like that, because that Nesamani, again, which we all know what happened to it the last couple of years with the meme. But before the meme came out, Friends as a standalone film was a huge hit.
Because of his comedy.
And because he didn't mind making fun of himself. He said, and all that. And that famous scene where he falls into that bin.
That bin, the black.
And when he comes out, again, all that, if I read it properly, they say he made it a point to jump into that thing.
Correct.
And that physical pain, because he knows.
He knows it'll work.
If I put myself as the underdog who's the victim here, people tend to like me more.
Correct. And it's especially funny because here's this character who's scolding everyone, shouting at everyone, supposedly in charge, but he's the butt of all jokes.
Correct.
So that's you like that, because you see what you relate to is my boss who scolds me all the time. But imagine my boss gets screwed up like Vadivelu does. That is where the comedy comes from. That's why it applies to your everyday things, right? Yeah.
And then on that same note, again, I think we spoke about Friends, and of course we obviously spoke about Winner, where I feel he kind of figured out that magic ingredient about self-depreciating jokes. But I think again, we are talking about how we sort of became from big to bigger, right? Of course, we had that more, as I said, we had the era where Vivek and Vadivelu sort of neck to neck.
Yeah.
And then with Winner, he sort of kind of put it up. One of the films which I think also defined him as probably the greatest ever at that generation is a movie called Vetri Kodigattu.
Okay.
Right? That Vandita is that movie which I feel kind of changed the game for him.
Right?
Yeah. Because I think that's when he realized that, hey, I can play different characters though the concept is the same.
Yeah.
Because I remember this, there was a era where I think every film, he was just playing like a different get-up. He was that, remember there was one scene where and the CPPPPP அது என்ன சார், அது ஒரு வேற குழு,
அது ஒரு கவர்மெண்ட் ஏஜென்சி.
Again, it's again the same concept of a guy who's overconfident and stuff, but he was playing roles, right? Again, in Vetri Kodigattu, he played with this whole idea of voice modulation.
Yeah.
That Vanditaya, he just knew that, again, I just have to play with voice.
Correct.
I've changed get-ups. Now voice also becomes a part of comedy, right? And then that just, again, gave him an entirely new feel to his comedy.
So that is essentially Vadivelu, right? Like
Yeah.
he came in at that right time and he was smart enough to sort of adapt himself into that mold of like, okay, now the village in ponuchi, urban ponuchi.
Yeah.
But he found that timeless, that I think that's the key of it all. Like he found that he had to play these timeless characters who are in every society at every point of time, who what they say and what they do applies to almost anything and everything.
Yeah.
That is where Vadivelu really struck gold with this thing, and that's why he's our legendary Thalaivan to this day. And in 2019 we started a podcast with one of his dialogues, right? Yeah.
And I think obviously at the start of this podcast I did mention about how, as much as, again, this podcast is about Vadivelu, and I think a lot of people would have kind of tuned in wanting to kind of just hear his jokes or his comedy, but I think we made it a point, and I'm glad we stuck by it throughout this last 40 minutes about wanting to talk about the science behind why Vadivelu is who he is, right? Because I think it's very important for us to understand comedy is just not because you're funny.
Correct.
Right? There's a lot of people out there in the industry who are way more funny than Vadivelu, I'm sure. Right?
A lot of people in real life who are funny as hell.
Hilarious as hell. But why has no one been able to kind of take, let's be honest, Yogi Babu or Santanam, I don't take anything away from them. But in the next 5 to 10 years, you probably just remember 1 or 2 movies of Santanam. But at this point, Santanam, I just remember his, what's the movie? Siva Manasal Sakti. That's probably the only movie I remember of Santanam at this point. As much as he has done movie, Yogi Babu, I don't remember much, right? So, but Vadivelu, we're still talking about it. And I think people have to understand that there's a particular reason why Vadivelu became the brand he was, because there's science behind it. And I think I'm glad that we kind of took that a bit more serious approach to that comedy.
Correct.
That being said,
now that we're done with that,
and I think it is an absolute pavams of India that if we don't revisit some of our favorite Vadivelu comedy,
correct,
before we let people go of this very long podcast, because I feel we have to send people off with some laughter.
I like Vakil Vandu Muruganda. Kadubethrar, my lord.
Hey, Vandu.
Yes.
So I've got something. I basically just have a list of my favorite lines, and let's just walk through it again if we remember anything in particular. But again, my most favorite is, hey, who are you, man? Hey, how are you, man? Again, that entire play with modulation and stuff, right?
The one in Manadi Tiridi Vita in the cafe scene, the one he talks to the Chinese girl per se, which is just a North Indian girl. Hey, Bruce, my dear Chinese girl. Brother call பண்ணிட்டு ஒரு எண்ணெய் கிணறு வெடிச்சிருச்சான். After 20 crores loss மா.
Hey man, சட்னி எங்க வைப்ப? எங்க வைக்கணும்? இட்லி பக்கத்துல வை man. Put இட்லி on the table.
Vivek takes the idli and puts it right beside it.
Put chutney, right? But again, இதெல்லாம் வாலிபா வயசு.
No, the one he talks to his wife in that thing, and then suddenly the மாமனார் shouts from on top. என்னமா சத்தம்?
சும்மா பேசிட்டு இருக்கமா.
Essentially that should have been our podcast.
சும்மா பேசிட்டு இருக்கமா. Again, one of the things one of my favorite Vadivelu thing to always enjoy is the way he scolds people.
Yeah.
It's again exaggeration. Remember we spoke about how he just takes something from exaggeration. One of the line I am seeing here is என்னடா முட்டாள்தனமா பேசிட்டு இருக்க முட்டா பயல. What does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? But again, முட்டாள்தனமா பேசிட்டு இருக்க முட்டா பயல.
The one in Friends. I'm sorry guys, by the way, we are just literally sitting down here just recollecting and thinking about funny Vadivelu jokes. If you guys have any that you like that we missed out on, please put it in the comment section. We just want to have fun in this last bit of the episode, right? The one in Friends, when Charlie, he loses his memory. Vadivelu is holding the arwal. He's like, நீங்க யாரு? இவர் யாரு? உங்க வைப்பா? என்னது வைப்பா?
Even in that on that same note, the whole avana nee, but again, obviously of that humor would have never worked now, because you're way more sensitive piece of shit that we are. But
he comes out in winner and the thing, என்னப்பா என்ன தம்பி என்னாச்சு,
என்ன வச்சு காமெடி பண்ணலையே, நான் உன்னோட அழகா இருக்கிறதுனால உனக்கு இது. இந்த சேம் மூவி அங்க வெடிச்சு அந்த பஞ்சு மட்டும் இல்ல, அந்த காக்காவோட குட்டி நெஞ்சும் தான். துபாய் குறுக்கு சேர்ந்து துபாய் திருப்பி சொல்லு. குறுக்கு சந்து விவேகானந்தர் தெரு துபாய். நான் ஒன்றும் சொல்றேன், மொத்தத்துல எங்க அக்கா ஒரு சூப்பர் ஃபிகர்.
பேக்கரி வித் அக்கா வச்சு பேக்கரி வாங்கினேன்.
உங்க அக்கா நான் வச்சுக்கிறேன், பேக்கரி நீ வச்சுக்கோ, உங்க அக்கா நான் வச்சுக்கிறேன்னு சொன்னா
டீல் நல்லா இருந்துச்சு.
இல்ல அவன் சொல்லு தப்பா இருந்தாலும் அந்த அந்த டீலிங் எனக்கு ரொம்ப பிடிச்சிருச்சு. சாங்கி மங்கி அந்த குரங்கு பொம்மை என்ன வேலை? கண்ணாடி சார் நம்மளோட கேவலமா இருக்கும். Again, going back to what I was saying, right? They were self-depreciating jokes. So just
correct. So but ideally, that is what Vadivelu is all about. Like you just saw us like in the last 5 minutes or so just geeking out about comedy. I know this is not what we usually do in the podcast, but you know, this is Vadivelu. This is special. Okay, so we don't care. Okay, we can just keep going with the dialogues, with the comedies and all that. You know, in the one with Arun Vijay is like, hey. என்ன பார்த்தா என்ன மாதிரி இருக்கு மேன்? அந்த திருடுனதுக்கு தானே சொல்லுவாங்க.
What nonsense you are talking about me?
That is the one.
ஒரு ஜென்டல்மேன் பார்த்தா கேள்வி அது.
But yeah, so that's essentially Vadivelu for you guys. We didn't have to recollect.
I can go on and on, but
வருதா இல்லையா? We can go on and on and on about his comedy. We might never stop,
But I think as we sort of wrap up the podcast, this episode, I'm glad we touched on Vadivelu. Again, I'm sure it might not be the most exciting podcast, but I think it's our part to do.
Again, as I always say, it's a podcast about Tamil cinema, and there's so many things about Tamil cinema that we have to touch. If we don't, it's a huge crime. I always say this, and if we don't touch about Vadivelu, it's the biggest crime of all.
Correct. And I think as we end the podcast, please let us know your favorite Vadivelu comedies.
Please
and
flood the comment section.
I honestly wish we could have done an entire podcast just talking or reliving some of his comedy, but I think it is our job as people who want to talk about cinema in depth to just speak more than just the humor.
Correct.
And we're
because illati neenga paattukku பேசிட்டு போயிருவீங்க, இன்னும் நாங்க இங்க பேச வேணாம் அந்த மாதிரி.
And of course I say this in every podcast, for everybody who's been tagging us, sharing us and or mentioning us in your social media stories, Twitter, Facebook or Instagram, please keep doing so.
Yes,
especially also for this episode, share your favorite Vadivelu meme or whatever, and then share this podcast alongside with it so that we obviously would know that you guys are watching
record some fun your favorite Vadivelu jokes as well and tag us in it, so we don't have to go to YouTube and find it. You can just watch it on our Insta stories.
Exactly.
Our social media platform is all down here, and as always, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or if you're already listening there and you want to drop a comment, you can come over to YouTube. If you'll see a YouTube link down there in your descriptions. Come over to YouTube, drop some comments, talk to us. Let's let's just laugh at Vadivelu for the rest of our lives, and we'll be happy people. Correct or not?
And again, $1 million idea. If you guys have enough money, please go to Vadivelu and ask him to open
the idea. சொல்லிடுறா நம்மளுக்கு. சரி சொல்லு
எடுத்து நம்ம பிள்ளைங்க தானே.
Okay.
Please go to Vadivelu and give him some money and tell him to open up a TikTok account. You will easily become a millionaire.
Imagine Vadivelu, the YouTuber / TikToker.
TikToker and
என்ன ஸ்லிப் ஆகுது.
Some social media agency, please go to Vadivelu and ask him to open up a TikTok account. You will be a millionaire in no time.
All right, that is it. That is that for the end of this. என்ன தங்க ஸ்லிப் ஆகுது. Anyway, that is the end of this episode. Thank you for watching. My name is Tanesh.
My name is Joshua Michael, and this is
What She's Telling,
a Tamil cinema podcast.
Tanku.
What she's telling?